Spring is here. Weather Wagers continues. Brett Thacker, Dan Tomaso with you. It is Easter week, and that means Masters Week.
Hello, friends.
And that means some exciting weather to talk about, too. And actually, not all that exciting, but more dangerous. This is the time of year where we start to see some severe weather outbreaks across parts of the country. Not a lot of sports, of course, being impacted by that, although there will be some baseball. We're going to talk about that.
We certainly will.
But I want to get right into things first. We've seen over the last couple of weeks a large tornado outbreak, Dan, across the south central U.S. Today, actually, we're recording this on a Wednesday. We're seeing some significant severe weather in places like Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, some of the places that unfortunately were hit with bad weather last week. And, you know, I teach an intro to meteorology course, and I was showing the students today that this is textbook scenario of what happens. And, you know, I know that when you see the images of these tornadoes, everybody always thinks like it's always the worst thing that's happened or the worst case scenario. This is very typical every year of what we get in the central United States. This year may be a little worse, but every few years we seem to get pretty active severe weather.
Indeed.
So talk us through some of the ingredients and talk to us about the big picture and why we've been seeing several outbreaks over the recent weeks.
Yeah, so we'll kind of switch here to the graphics just to show again the area we're talking about. What happens this time of the year? It's pretty simple when you think about it. We're trying to warm up, as is normal for spring. We're also trying to fight back some of that cold air that wants to come in from the north and northwest at times, and it's always that battle zone in between that produces thunderstorms. Not all thunderstorms make tornadoes, but if the ingredients are correct leading into a thunderstorm, sometimes that rising air that makes the storm can acquire some spin, and you may get a brief tornado, you may get a long-track tornado, and we now have more ways scientifically to try to help understand the different scenarios. And last Friday was a bad day across parts of Arkansas, parts of Illinois. Yesterday, not nearly as significant, but still, for those impacted by the tornadoes, obviously not a great day. And today, that kind of shifts, today being Wednesday, to Indiana, Ohio, western PA possibly. And then we may still see a thunderstorm or two later tonight or tomorrow, being Thursday.
Across the East Coast, that's right. So keep in mind, too, that again, you mentioned it, large temperature differences create these situations. There was a blizzard, maybe too strong of a word, but definitely a snowstorm in the Dakotas.
Correct.
Parts of Iowa and parts of Minnesota. And then on the other side of that, you know, it's 85 degrees. So that's the type of setup that creates these violent situations. One more note, the twister in Arkansas, one of the tornadoes there, there was a great video that was shared with a TV station in Arkansas, and one of the meteorologists posted it. Two guys were outside. They were looking at some wooded area across
totally
from
unreal.
there. Well, and I don't know if you saw this.
Oh, I did.
But they ran inside of their compound, whatever it was. I don't know if it was just their
type of
basement. Yeah, it looked like a
or
basement or a garage. And first of all, their outdoor shed just got picked up and blown away. When they went outside, not more than about 30 seconds later, the complete wooded area was stripped.
Gone.
Just gone.
Yep.
I mean, that tells you what type of a tornado went through there. I don't know if I've ever seen video like that in my career. That was very impressive stuff, and it tells you about the raw power of it.
Well, and what I find interesting is, you know, we live in an area where tornadoes, relatively speaking, are very rare.
Yeah.
These folks live in areas that tornadoes are kind of a way of life. And you know about it in the spring and summertime. It was that video, and there was another video of this couple. You know, she's saying, babe, get inside. And they're holding onto these glass doors as a tornado is fastly approaching, and they don't move.
Yeah, not smart.
They keep videotaping, same as this guy in the garage.
Right. At least he did move.
And I'm thinking to myself, isn't your natural instinct to run?
It should be.
I mean, even me, I've never seen one. I would love to see one from a distance.
Yep.
But if it got closer, I certainly would be taking cover and forget the video.
You got to be safe, and the closest thing that we've had here to anything like that would be the Campbelltown tornado back in 2004, which did destroy a large part of that community. But
Country Squire Estates.
Yeah,
I've been there.
Yeah, and I know somebody that had their house destroyed in that, and it was they still talk about it. Very devastating time. But that is the time of year that we are in. We do expect, as you said, more severe weather through the end of the week, and then things pretty much quiet down for Easter weekend, which is good news.
And it could turn much warmer next week again.
There is an area of the country, though, that does look unsettled, and that would be
Down where the Masters
the Georgia Pines. We're talking MLB. We're talking the Masters. We want to give a Masters forecast and a forecast for other sports coming up. But first, let's go back to last week. We had a Final Four talk, and we had our Final Four pizza toppings. The Twitter poll results are in, and
people have spoken.
They are pretty unequivocal here.
So here's what we to recap. Here's what we had. Okay, so you picked out pepperoni, bacon, banana peppers, and then curiously enough, which sparked a little debate out there of broccoli.
Yeah, we got some, maybe not mean tweets, but we got some. I did about the broccoli choice. Yes. You had all meat and then black olives.
Yeah, and again, everyone's got their thing. That's for sure. I will say though, I like a combo, and so if you could picture some of these as a combo, and I did get some responses.
More of a dump truck pizza. Huh?
Yeah. You know, again, I think personally the best is meat eaters, or whatever you want to say.
Meat lovers.
Meat lovers.
So what did the poll reveal?
So here is the poll results.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, both sides.
Pepperoni.
Even with the option of bacon, and I thought that'd be a popular one.
Yes.
57 to 71% between our two polls.
Now, bacon did come in as the next highest meat, 27% for me. Sausage for you. Meatballs didn't do well.
I'm surprised by that. Now, maybe it's because it's usually mixed in with something else and people don't necessarily get that solo, if you will, as a topping. I do get it solo as a topping. If you go to like a good Italian restaurant and they put their homemade Italian meatballs on top of it,
it's good.
Can't beat it. And it's more like a meal that way, too.
And they bake them in with the pizza.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's excellent.
Look at black olives, 3%. Not a surprise there, but
I know people are out there.
Look at broccoli. Not a single vote.
But it does surprise me because I went back and forth with someone that responded to your poll, and they said, broccoli on a pizza, never heard of it. I'm like, have you ever heard of white pizza? Do you live under a rock?
Right. Broccoli is a lot of times on white pizza. Now, I like it with the bacon.
Broccoli and tomato, you know.
Veggie pizza?
Correct.
Not that should exist, but I like broccoli with a little bacon.
Yes.
But
nothing wrong with that.
No. So there it is. You weighed in pepperoni coming in number one, and not a surprise. That was what we call a holding chalk. That
was holding chalk.
That did well.
Now, before we go away from that, Mr. Shiner, your thoughts on such results?
I mean, I think it played out the way we would expect it. What I'd like to see, though, is the pepperoni versus cheese debate. Plain cheese pizza versus a pepperoni pizza. Who wins that? Because you think it's a coin flip, but, I mean, there's a lot of just plain cheese pepperoni lovers out there.
Honestly, sometimes it depends on my mood.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But I'd be curious to see if we wanted to go one step further, like pepperoni versus good old-fashioned cheese pizza.
It avoids a bellyache, that's for sure, or some acid reflux.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I actually thought a surprise to me was that we didn't get a single reply saying extra cheese. Maybe it was a 90s thing.
Or maybe, does that count as a topping?
Yeah.
I think it does. They charge you for it, right?
An extra add-on.
They shouldn't charge for that. It's cheese. It's a little extra cheese, but,
just throw it on there.
You know how much cheese costs these days? I mean,
you know how much everything costs these days. You're right.
True,
stuffed crust was a thing.
Yeah,
they still do that.
Seems
I don't
to
know,
fallen
but
by the wayside.
Yeah, I
like that.
I got behind that.
The Pizza Hut stuffed crust was very good, and again, that was a '90s thing, and I always thought that was such a treat to get that.
Imagine that being your job, coming up with creative ways to make a pizza. That would be a fun job.
That or styling it for a commercial, because it's not edible once those people touch it. But they always look so good.
They look so much better on TV, don't they? All right, let's move on here. We want to talk about the potential for rainouts this weekend in Major League Baseball. And Dan, here's the good news. It looks like a beautiful Easter weekend. Some people may be going out to the ballpark to celebrate, doing a little church or brunch and then headed to the ball game, wherever you may be. I think that's fantastic. There is one series, though, that we have targeted for the potential as having a rainout. Now, of course, when we look at this, there may be some other areas of rain, but those stadiums like Texas, for example, a lot of them have retractable roofs. The one place that doesn't, oddly enough, is Truist Park.
Yeah, and it's a newer park. I mean, within the last 5 years, I believe. So the Braves are kind of in peril this weekend, and, we'll get to the Masters here in a moment. You can kind of imagine where we're going with that.
It's pretty close.
This front stalls. So the front we were mentioning that brings the severe
Pull
weather
it up there
to
if
the
you can.
Midwest. Yeah, so let me just go. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't hit the button. Hey, there we go.
Okay.
So these are the games, all 720 pitches.
Yes.
Which, again, with the games going shorter, I've been hearing a lot of dialogue about this. They're over before 10, which is pretty wild.
And by the way, for somebody that has to do morning TV, I
It's
am
perfect.
loving it. I do get to see most of the games now, but these are all 7:20 first pitches. And by the way, there is a game on Easter. So this is a 4-game
Yes.
series.
So let's go back here for a second. I just want to show this front and how it just kind of gets stuck.
Yeah, it goes through the Midwest, through the Ohio Valley, through Pennsylvania, and part of the Mid-Atlantic, but it does stall out over the
It
Southeast.
does, and that's the problem. So, whether it is rain, whether it's thunderstorms, not good for baseball either way.
No.
Outdoors.
No. Now, again, will some of the convection die down in the evening? You would hope, but I do think some of these games are probably going to get delayed at
Yes.
the very least.
Or at least it's a close call. And if
Yes.
lightning's in the distance, all bets are off. So, again, we're starting out here with the first day of the series, the first day of the official Masters kicking off. Look at these temperatures, 83 to 84 degrees, both locations. It's actually kind of weird to think about. We're almost as warm here in PA, which
Yeah,
I
some
always
of
think
us
of the
may be today.
Masters as it's cold, it's dreary here, looks nice down in Augusta, but
Yeah.
we're not going to be that much
The
different.
azaleas in bloom.
And my azalea just bloomed out front of my house.
So it is going to be warm at least,
Yes.
but the problem will be as we move into Thursday, Friday,
Yep.
Saturday,
We're
as
going
that
to play this out.
as that front gets hung up. Talk to us about the odds of at least some showers for both places.
Yeah, so let me back this up just a touch. I want to show around game time. It doesn't look that bad. More sporadic, scattered showers, maybe a thunderstorm or two.
There may be some delays at Augusta, though. Look at that.
And it's, again, so close that, 20, 30 miles can make the difference. But then into Friday morning, gets a little more robust. And then Friday afternoon is probably a more concerning time for both locations because there's thunderstorms in the vicinity, very good coverage of those storms, and I'm going to try to roll this out as far as I can into Saturday. That's about as far as I can get. It almost repeats itself Saturday.
Yeah, there's almost a daily chance of convection, and of course, when that happens, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where that's going to be, but I would certainly anticipate some rain each day during the Masters, except hopefully for Sunday, we can get the picturesque walk to the 18th green. I think the Braves are going to have some issue each night. There may be some delays. There may be some 5-inning games. We're going to get into that in just a bit. But ultimately, it's hard to know exactly where each of these cells will set up.
Right, and it's early, so I think there will be a little more caution. April, there's always a little bit more built-in time. You have more off days to kind of kick things down into the future. But it's definitely concerning for any outdoor weather event, let alone baseball and the Masters.
Yeah, so let's go back to the graphic again with the Padres if we can, because this is an interesting series. These are two teams that are good. Obviously, we're familiar with both. The Braves, we ousted them in the playoffs. They won the division. And then the Padres, of course, we met in the NL Championship Series last fall. Both still expected to have pretty good seasons. Now, remember, MLB odds do not come out until 10 p.m. the day before the game. And so for those of you listening and playing along, part of that has to do with, again, weather. Some of it has to do with starting lineups and pitching. So we don't have exact lines for these games, but I do believe the Braves are going to be favored by the standard 1.5 run line for each of these games. And then, Dan, if you have something to add about each squad and who you think might take this early critical series in the NL, I'm going to talk about what happens to your bet if the game only does go 5 innings.
Yeah, so I'm just quickly looking at Thursday, for instance. Total number of runs is set at 8. So that's pretty fair for two good offenses. And as
Especially
you mentioned,
now.
You mentioned 1.5. That's the spread currently.
Yeah.
I do think, so what's interesting about this series is they're all night games. So even Sunday, it's a night game on ESPN.
That's Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah, Sunday Night Baseball. So each of these teams have kind of followed a different path. And so to break it down for you, there's two ways to build a roster. You can build it young, or you can kind of acquire players. And the Padres have tried to do a little bit of both. And I don't know how successfully they're going to be at doing this because they keep signing players to long-term deals, 7, 8, 9, 10-year deals. Manny Machado, one of those guys that could have opted out this year, signed a long-term deal. I believe it goes out to 2033. I just heard today.
That's like a Trey Turner, Bryce Harper deal.
Correct. And Manny Machado, certainly a game changer. When you look at Fernando Tatis Jr., he was obviously a controversial player the last couple of years between riding his motorcycle, breaking his wrist after a good season.
Vroom, vroom.
It's always a motorcycle.
Yes.
And then on top of that, he decided to take some type of steroid. I think it was a cream. So he got busted with that last year, out 80 games. So he's still sitting out this part of the season. But then the Padres go out this offseason. Again, not a very large market team, but they signed Xander Bogaerts to another long-term deal. They re-up Yu Darvish, who's already approaching 40 years old quickly.
And we know all about him. He had some good games against us.
I agree. So there's Yu Darvish there. So they have some pieces. They just signed Jake Cronenworth to a long-term deal. But the Braves, right now on paper, may be the best National League team across the board.
You expect them to take 3 out of 4 here?
I do. Now, the Padres are playing about 500 ball to start out this season, but the Braves, the difference is their younger core. Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Freddie Freeman left, but then you pull in a guy like Matt Olson, certainly maybe not exact place filler, if you will, for Freddie Freeman, but had a pretty good season last year. And then they make this trade for Sean Murphy with the Athletics. And so there's really not a weakness on the team other than shortstop.
Let me ask you a couple of things about this. Do you believe the Braves have better pitching than the Padres? Where do you stand on that? Because Yu Darvish is good. Do they have other pieces, though, especially going forward into the season? Who do you favor pitching-wise in this series?
Well, Spencer Strider has looked probably the best of any starter so far this year. Now, he wore down at the end of last year, but this is the guy, to remind you, throws about 98, 99, 100 consistently,
yes.
And locates it. That's the difference. So he's kind of their X factor. Now, they have an injury with Max Fried, who came out of his last start with a hamstring issue. Now, I think he's been officially placed on the IL. So, the Braves are down a starter coming into this, but they have a couple of young guys that they like, and Schuster, and I'm blanking on the other name, but regardless, the Braves are down one starter. When you look at the Padres, they have Yu Darvish, they have Joe Musgrove, they have some bullpen pieces in Josh Hader, who seems to be figuring it out with his new team. So it's pretty close pitching staff-wise. The biggest thing the Braves have to look out for the first half of the season, Raciel Iglesias, their closer, is now hurt.
Aha.
And likely will be out the entire year, if not 80 to 90% of it. So
you just picked them to win 3 out of 4.
Yes.
So what? Just real quick, what gives them the edge this weekend?
I think the offense.
Their bats are going to be
I think
swinging.
the Braves at home, very tough to beat down there in Atlanta, and that's why the most impressive part to me about the Phillies' run to the postseason last year was beating Atlanta the way they did.
In Atlanta.
Yes.
Last question about that, focusing on the Padres again. You mentioned that they're a smaller market team, but wouldn't you suggest or don't you believe that they act like a big market team?
They
because
certainly are now.
They've had success, and now they're certainly one of the premier teams in the National League where, and we've talked about this too, the Phillies at times, big market team that acted small market.
Correct. And now I've kind of turned it around. But
yes, correct.
Believe it or not, the Padres have the third highest payroll now in all of baseball, behind Steve Cohen and the Mets and the Steinbrenners and the Yankees. I mean, that's incredible.
It is, especially when you think about some of these other big market teams.
They're above the Dodgers now.
Right.
The Dodgers have kind of stepped back and reset a little bit. I almost forgot, and I'm remiss to say this. I can't believe I forgot to mention Mr. Blake Snell, who is now a very hated member of the Padres by Phillies fans because of hitting Bryce Harper on the hand last year, breaking his hand and knocking him out for a time. So they have Blake Snell, too. So the top three of their rotation should be pretty strong. I imagine both of these teams, this is a playoff preview, if you will.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be there all year long.
So if you had to place a wager on the game tomorrow night, just the Thursday night game, you want to pick the Braves to cover that 1.5?
I picked the Braves to cover the 1.5. Now, with that said, rain could certainly mess with this.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about, if you don't mind,
go
because this was something that I needed to look up, because baseball betting is difficult, and it can be kind of wonky.
And I thought this was interesting that you pulled this up, because I always wonder, too, like, what do you do if this situation happens, if that situation happens, and how do you adjust? Because the NFL went through this year with that weird Cincinnati-Buffalo game.
Now that was a really odd situation with DeMar Hamlin. But this, if a weather event does happen, it does affect your bet. So the few rules of thumb, these are games that are played 5+ innings to become official, but don't reach the full 9 innings, right? So that's just like, it would count anyway in the books if they play 5 innings and then it gets rained out.
Correct.
But full money line becomes official once the game goes 5 innings, or if the home team leads after 4.5 innings. So if that game tonight were to get rained out, and you've got couple of dollars on the
I do want to see the
Braves.
pitching matchup. I should be more complete about this here tonight.
But I'm just saying, if they're winning after 5 or after 4.5, you're good.
So
Okay.
another reason why I'd pick Atlanta, Spencer Strider
There
is
he
up
is.
in his rotation spot on Thursday night.
Give him
So
some triple-digit heat in there.
and Blake Snell, who's had control issues, is pitching on the Padres side. So this really, to me, leans Braves.
Now, in contrast, some of the other bets when it comes to baseball, like totals, score props, run lines, winning margins, they are going to be void no matter what.
Correct.
Unless the game goes 9 innings. That makes sense.
Interesting.
Now, at some books, bets that have been unequivocally determined will still be honored. So that means if a game goes over, it's still going to count. Okay? But because an under can never be truly unequivocally determined, that would be void, which is interesting. Now, at other books, overs and unders are going to be voided no matter what, unless the game goes 9 innings. It depends on which book you're playing. Inning bets will generally stand if those innings have been completed. Okay? So if you bet something in the first inning, Bryce Harper to get a hit.
Sure,
or,
sure.
Tonight,
some type of prop
if
bet.
you bet Spencer there to get a strikeout,
Strike out the side, something like that.
and the game only goes 6 innings, that bet's still going to count. It happened in the first inning. If you bet a first 5 innings total, your bet will still count even if the game doesn't go 9 innings. If you make an inning bet and the game gets called during that inning, the bet will be void since the official results will revert to the previous inning. So make a note of that.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to think about. And there is a lot of in-game betting with baseball currently.
There is, and it almost makes more sense to do it that way.
Right, to let things kick off and see how.
Correct. If you really feel good about a pitching matchup, I think you could lay down the points, but it's always going to be 1.5. I've seen some 2.5s. That's tough because, again,
Got to cover it.
you got to cover it. Like last night, what would make you think the Phillies were all of a sudden going to win last night? I don't know, but they did. And that's what we're going to morph this debate into. The Phillies were 0-3. They go into last night's series against the Yankees, and they do get the win. Their bats woke up a little bit. I'm loving the shorter games. But you and I had a debate, and we're going to bring it on the podcast here. I'm one of those people that I want to watch good baseball. And this is a lineup that should be delivering. And I did hear Tom McCarthy say last night that we are, really in the hole when it comes to home runs for, home runs against right now. The bats are not waking up. Now, I understand there's a few arguments against me here. One is it's a long season. I don't care about that. I'm living right now. I want to see wins. 2,
What have you done for me lately?
yes. 2, now I lost my train of thought. What have you done for me lately? And two opening series that are pretty difficult.
On the road.
On the road, the Rangers, and then the American League darling, the New York Yankees. So I get all of that. But listen, what I don't get about you is you want to forgive this team right away. I've never met anybody more blunt, more harsh than you about anything. And what I'm going to say is if you want to be a contender and you want to step up to the plate, no pun intended, you got to beat teams like this. You got to win series. I don't care that it's early. Show me something. Where was the pitching?
Well, and I think
Because I thought it sucked.
You got to back up a little bit because notice the guys that struggled out of the chute: Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler.
You're ready to trade him.
Aaron Nola is a different scenario, but I'll get into that in a minute. I think there was a conceited plan here to slow play these guys coming into the season. It was fairly clear they didn't have their command and control yet, and that's okay to me because you saw a lot of injuries in spring training, guys ramping up too fast, tissue injuries.
Tissue issues.
Yes, tissue issues. Even Andrew Painter, was he going too hard too fast? You got to be careful because you lose a guy early, that could be the season.
Yeah, because you don't want to say April doesn't count. It all counts.
Right.
But you do need these guys fresh. I hear you on that.
So I think you'll see over the next couple of starts that both of those guys have. You'll see them go longer. I think the command and control will be better. And surprisingly to me, and I was very put off by this, that, okay, you had all spring training to figure this out. Aaron Nola looked lost with the pitch count. I don't know. The whole clock idea was not new. It didn't start with game 1. You had spring training. He seemed okay with it in spring training, and then he got gassed by the pitch clock in game 1.
I do think there in an actual game, I do think there is you have to be somewhat forgiving of that aspect. All of these guys are coming out there. It really is having it has to have somewhat of an impact on rhythms and things like that.
Well, and that's what JT said. So JT Realmuto said basically when it started to snowball, it was hard to stop.
Right.
Because it was happening so fast.
And don't you think it gets in,
Oh,
beyond the physical, it gets in their head too?
but that is concerning to me. That
It should be.
You
I
know,
agree. And that's my point. I saw too many sloppy things going on.
Sure.
Not enough offense. And just enough to raise some questions. Now, I'm not one of these people that's going to, get on Philly talk radio and go nuts.
There's been a lot of that already.
I bet there has, but I'm just simply saying I'm concerned. And
even our coworker Dennis Owens told us they were going to be lousy this year. Last year was an anomaly.
Yes, he did. Mr. Shiner, you've watched some. Just a quick thought on what you've seen. I know it's early, but.
It's early, and I am not a fair weather friend. As you can see, I'm still repping the old school P there on the hat. But I do want to bring up a point that the
Please.
two teams that were in the World Series are a combined 3-8 so far, and that's the Houston Astros as long. They are 2-4. So is this more of a World Series hangover? We talk about in football all the time.
Super
because
Bowl,
you're playing the longer season. Are these guys just not quite up? Now, that's what spring training's for. I get that. But there's something to be said about playing all those extra games and the type of games you play in the
intensity
playoffs.
level,
It's
sure.
not the same. It's not. And all hands are on deck. And are these guys just they got to come into their own here a little deeper in the season? And we're seeing it with the Astros as well. That's my main point.
It's a good one.
One thing I do want to bring up with just the Phillies in general, I noticed last night they do a charity thing that for every pitch over 95 miles an hour, they donate a certain sum. Well, when Mr. Jose Alvarado got out there, he threw 17 consecutive pitches of 95 or more. So it's good to see these Phillies pitchers with gas. We're not used to that. Now, I know that's kind of the way the MLB is trending, but they were even saying on the broadcast, like, well, get the checkbooks out. We're gonna get
He's
a couple
unreal.
over
He
95
is totally
here.
Unreal.
That was phenomenal to watch. Great point. Alvarado looking good now. I want to
just
actually
shoved.
just pointing that out. So the one game where the Phillies just totally bombed against the Rangers, like it was 16 to whatever, I think. My son and I were at baseball practice. I was following along, unfortunately, and we get home, and he wanted to turn it on. So, and he said, why is this guy's, we're a bunch of bums. My son said this. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, look at the pitcher. He's just like tossing it. This guy stinks. And he was tossing it. It was like 50 miles an hour.
Yep.
And I said, I think what's going on is we've run out of pitchers and they've waved the white
bring
flag,
in a
right?
positional
Isn't
player.
that what
Yep,
happened
Josh
at that point?
Harrison, yep.
And the reason for that, and I'm trying to explain this to him, is because it's over. You're not going to you're going to do exactly what you said.
Right. Preserve.
Wave the white flag, save him for another day. This one's over, folks, right?
Yeah, and keep
That'd
in
be
mind,
like you getting out there and
right. I would love it. That
throwing
would be
a 50 mile an hour.
That'd be the opportunity of
The
a
old
lifetime.
ephus pitch.
But he
as
was
they
so
used to
mad.
do.
He was so
Yeah.
mad they were doing that, and I had to explain. Well, I get it.
I totally get it too, and even Junior Marte, which I know has become a thorn in Philly radio side right now. So he was an acquisition from the Giants, kind of a roster fringy type guy. Goes out there and throws 99 consistently.
Yeah.
If he harnesses it, watch out, because it could be Jose Alvarado on the right-handed side, because it's filthy.
Shout out to the lefties of
Hey.
the world.
Southpaw.
There you go. Okay, let's move on and talk Masters, because it is a tradition unlike any other, and it is here. And we've got to talk about the weather first, and we've certainly had better weekends at Augusta.
Yeah, and keep in mind we've already talked about Atlanta's weather, so let me go back to this. Keep in mind the thunderstorm coverage here. Thursday, not as much. So I think opening day, okay.
And sneak it in. Yeah,
But
Friday's concerning.
That's the concerning part, Friday. And right now, this model kind of puts the front in between both Atlanta and Augusta. If that shifts a little farther to the east,
Look out.
I'm not liking their chances. And again, I'll take this through Saturday morning. At least Saturday morning is damp
It
to
does- and
kind of
cool.
the left and cooler.
Look at that.
Now, could the clouds clear a little bit faster? We see the temperature start to ramp up. But either way, the first 2 days are in the 80s. It may be cooler Saturday, and then we may open back up again Sunday.
Sounds good. Let's talk Masters odds, and these odds were, as of yesterday, by our friends at Caesars, and we put the top 5, the tournament winners on here. Scotty Scheffler.
Does that surprise you?
No, because didn't he win? Was he last year's winner? Who won last year? I think it was,
Scheffler.
right? Yeah. So that's what I thought. So they're going to put him at number 1, coming
Gotcha.
in trying to do the repeat.
He just
And
recently won previous tournament.
He's
a
been
couple weeks
winning.
ago, too.
Yes, thank you, David. And David's right. Like he's hot right now, and some guys just perform well at Augusta.
The big stage.
And he's one of them. Rory McIlroy getting a lot of chatter. Now,
Yes.
that's I always find that to be somewhat funny because, all of these guys get a lot of chatter. If you're a Rory fan, you're going to be rooting for Rory. But I do think there's something that he could finally complete the Grand Slam of his career if he can get a green jacket. He's plus 700. So, again, he's right there to do this.
Our golf aficionado here at the station, Anthony Durso, told me to watch out for Rory McIlroy and that he had made some adjustments that could put him as the favorite.
I actually am going to pick him to win. I actually may put a little sawbuck down on Mr. McIlroy and see where we end up because I think he wants it. I think he's playing good golf right now, and I don't see why that's going to stop. Now, again, the weather may be a factor.
But by Sunday, hopefully, if everyone remains kind of tightly packed, Sunday could save it.
So, and I know that you've had you always like me to explain this too, but that means if I lay $100, I'm going to get $700 back.
My goodness.
That's what a plus 700
Yes.
means. So if you feel confident or even just want to ride on Scotty, put $10 down. You get 50.
Interesting.
Why not? John Rahm next. Tell you what.
Who's that?
He is, he's a power hitter.
Okay.
He's the power hitter.
He's the Kyle Schwarber?
He's the Kyle Schwarber, the Rom Bomb.
Which, by the way, that was good to see last night, too. Kyle Schwarber getting a hold of one after he had just missed a couple in the Rangers series.
Yes.
Good to see.
Felt good that he was back. John Rahm, Jordan Spieth, talk about
kind of America's darling, Jordan Spieth.
Is he a lefty, too, right? I think so. I think so, David. But he's plus 1,600. But again, he's always right there. He's somebody that I feel could have had more success than he has.
Yes, kind of fallen off the table a little bit.
Yep, and then Patrick Cantlay coming into plus 1,800. And let me bring in Mr. Shiner here. I know he's looking up something, but what do we think of that top five there? Do you think Patrick could make a run? Do you think maybe Rory could do it? And what do you think of the Rom Bomb?
Rahm is just a constant top five guy. I mean, that's why he's always up there. I think Rory, you're always going to have him in play because, he's one of the big names. If I'm able to throw out just like a little teaser, a player, Max Homa, plus 2,500 right now, and has been playing really good golf lately.
Like we're talking
like you
to
said,
Stanford Steve here.
a $10 bet get you 250. I mean, hey, I'm just saying, if you got the ducats to throw out there, give it a shot.
And again, a lot of these times you just don't know who's going to be around on Sunday. How about, may I ask, Tiger? What are we at with
I was noticing that name was absent from this list.
Yeah.
Well, as it should be on the top, but never count him out. So
but
what
you
would
never count him out.
What are his odds there? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head if you can look that up. But, I mean, we all know golf is more watched. I like to say it's more fun because I am a Tiger fan. But he just brings something to Augusta that, when you start hearing those crowds on those other greens, like everybody's like, is Tiger coming? I mean, he still has it. People might not fear him as much as they used to when he was making that epic, 15-year run there. What's he at?
You want to guess?
I'll say
over under plus 5,000.
I'll go 5,500.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like such a dark horse. I would go over.
It depends on where you're looking. 6,600.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, hey, like I said, $10.
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Now,
660,
apparently, he was out on a practice round and played the round of his life leading into this.
The big thing with him
It's
is
his course, man. It's his course.
But it's really if his body can hold up. He's still coming back from the ankle injuries and all that, and walking is still taking its toll. In fact, myself and Anthony Dursto talk about him quite often. And the big thing we know he still has it, but does he have it for 4 days? And that's how you win in the PGA.
Correct.
Anyone can be a good golfer and shoot a 65, but can you shoot under 70 for 4 consecutive days? And that's what Tiger needs to do. I guarantee he'll have one round where
really good.
he looks like himself. Just how many of those rounds does he have in him?
And I will again remind you of the title of this podcast. When you have aches and pains like that, the weather does not help when it's going to be cool
damp,
and drizzly.
That trick
And
shoulder, that buckled knee.
That does not bode well. That does not bode well for an old man. playing the
Well,
Masters.
he could contact us and find out some weather tidbits.
He could, and we would love to. Tiger, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on
Please,
the pod.
come on the pod.
So here's another name for you, and I saw he's back into the mix. Uncle Phil.
Well, he is.
And that's a whole nother story with the live guys.
Yeah, the live
Yeah.
golfers. Now, things are going to stay, civil at the Masters.
Allegedly.
They'll get kicked out. But no, I don't think Phil is a shot.
Interesting.
I'd like it if he did, but I
Yeah.
just don't think he does.
I think Phil's just going after the money grab at this point. Not that he can't play good golf, but I do believe he's still the oldest person to win a major most recently.
With the PGA.
Yeah, so I mean, just like with Tiger, these guys, you find it for a weekend.
Yep.
Hey,
It's
you're
all
on the
about
leaderboard.
And they seem to find it at Augusta. And this year, again, it's always special when the calendar lines up with Easter Sunday and you're coming home and you're sitting down and watching those azaleas in bloom and you're looking at Amen Corner and you're watching the Masters on Easter. So it's going to be a good tournament. Dave, thank you.
Always.
And
You mean people won't be watching the news at 6 on Sunday when I'm on?
is that a shout out?
They'll come over and then go back.
They'll want to
for
check the weather
18th.
and then come back. All right.
I'll believe it when I see it.
We do have a few news and notes quickly to wrap up. Actually, before we had on from the Masters, a fun thing that we did here at the station is, they have this Champions Dinner where they go upstairs and they eat fancy food. There's a regular dinner and then a Champions Dinner. And we each, all of the anchors, meteorologists, sports folks here at the station, we picked out what would be our favorite dinner.
We did.
And we want you to go and vote on our website, abc27.com. And I got to tell you, some of these people are crazy with their choices.
I was surprised. I
Yeah.
was surprised. Now, did I find out that our Mr. James Crummell likes a good Bananas Foster?
Yes, he does like a good. And by the way, they probably have that at Augusta.
That I do believe.
Done well. I had steak, lobster, your
I
typical.
believe I had steak as well.
Yeah, some mashed potatoes on there, and then a really good chocolate cake for my dessert. What did you have for your dessert course?
I'm trying to think of what I did put down for dessert. It's been a while since I thought
Well,
about this.
you go to our website, abc27.com. You look it up. You got to vote for your favorite meal.
I mean-
Appetizers, bacon wrapped scallops.
I think I put chocolate peanut butter pie. Now I'm thinking about it.
That's good too. That's good. Maybe
It
that's
was
next
chocolate
year's
peanut
pie
butter.
in the face.
Well, and I was going to say this time of the year, peanut butter eggs.
Oh, they're good. They're good.
And you got to save one for after Easter too. So
You know
get a
what's
little
gross
taste of
though
that.
when you have the eggs lined up and you go to bite into one and you realize it's coconut.
If it surprises you, yes, I did find a good
That's
source
gross.
for a while that could make a really good creamy coconut egg.
Yeah.
It's got to be creamy. If it's dry, I hate it.
The only time I've ever eaten coconut is it was at the local Bonefish Grill. The
interesting.
coconut rum pie is one of the best desserts I've ever had.
Wow.
It's a coconut pie that is soaked on the bottom. It's swimming in rum, and it is.
Wow, I had no idea this existed.
Oh,
And I'm a rum guy, so.
it is. It is one of the best desserts, and really one of the only coconut things I like.
Huh.
Try it. Go.
I
Let's
would-
go.
I would-
Let's go for
I'll-
lunch.
yeah. I'll go get a steak. Why not?
Okay. Now, cleaning up last week's mess on this podcast, we do want to mention Penn State did hire a new basketball coach.
They
since we
did,
were
and
here.
they ponied up.
You're happy with this?
I'm very happy with this. I mean, they went after a name. They didn't go after an assistant. I was worried they were going to hire an assistant, which to me I think would have fallen flat with the fan base.
Yeah.
And Micah Shrewsbury was a great find. I still contend I would have let him walk. I'm not sure 1 year makes or breaks a guy, and to me, he knew there wasn't going to be anything left, and this was the year to go. So to me, they might have upgraded, which is hard to believe.
And they're keeping him here with a big buyout to start.
Yeah, his name is Mike Rhodes, and
Yep.
he was a part of the Lebanon Valley College national championship team. So he has local ties.
He does.
And more importantly, he has good recruiting prowess
Yes.
in the DMV.
And he's had success at VCU,
Yes.
so it's not a nobody, that's for sure. Our sports director, Ali Barubi, talked with his old coach about some of the memories he knows of Mike Rhodes. That story you can get on our website at abc27.com. We're loaded with content this week. But if you want to know more about Mike and hear some of the things that his old coach has to say, you can check out that story. But I hope the next story that's written is about how he kind of makes himself at home at Penn State.
I certainly
right?
hope so. I mean, he's going to be here at least a few years. Now, whether or not he stays more than 3, 4, that's hard to say. But the first 2 years are pretty much locked in. Otherwise, he's going to be paying back a lot of that contract. It's all about recruiting. So he's got to find a way to get kids excited about coming to Penn State.
Well, And you know what, Dan? It's all about NIL.
Well, that too, and that still could be the struggle. That still could be the struggle. Although I would hope it's better than what VCU was offering. I could be wrong. Maybe there's some big boosters there that offer some better NIL deals, but let's hope he can use some of the Penn State donors that are generous to his advantage.
Listen, it's certainly
Roar,
an intriguing
Lions,
thing.
roar.
We keep hearing about the NIL issues.
Yep. Well, and this team, they only have 2 scholarship players on it currently. So they're going to have to bring in somebody to play if they don't want to fall on their face this year.
It really is an interesting
and how many guys follow him is still the question. People are waiting to see, okay, the VCU guys that entered the transfer portal, do they follow him?
Well, because right now we don't have a team.
So here's an interesting connection.
Right? I mean, there's nobody there.
Yeah, correct. Here's an interesting connection that I love. So I don't know if you're aware of this. But our Jared Phillips is Phil Martelli's nephew. So Phil Martelli, for those who don't know, coached the St. Joseph Hawks in Philadelphia, coached probably one of the best teams in Philadelphia history while he was there, made a pretty deep run in the NCAA, did not win the overall championship. Jameer Nelson, we're getting the Hawk. We got to pull up Mr. Shiner for that. Give us a Hawk. There we go. So
got to do this the whole time you're talking too, right? You don't stop.
So Phil Martelli is now an assistant with Michigan. So he was essentially run out of his job, I believe, from St. Joe's as things started to sour over time. But his son is a big recruiter and known for that. He is now on the Penn State staff. And I believe Mike Rhodes was asked, how do you recruit Philadelphia in the big cities? Well, you hire Martelli, and that's what he did. So interesting little ABC 27 connection there.
That is very interesting. And again, I think it's a great hire for what Penn State is,
right,
and for what Penn State can be. So I'm excited to see how this develops.
Me too. And again, it's all about buy-in.
And patience.
All about buy-in.
And patience.
Yeah, it may not happen this year.
Correct.
And you got to give him that cushion. I mean, the first year under Shrewsbury had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, this year had its ups and downs too. I mean, by January, most of the fan base was writing the team off. But you
As
just
usual.
never know.
No, you don't. Do we have a single shot of me for just a second? Because we were.
Don't believe we do.
Don't. Okay, go to a 2-shot, and I'm going to see because I just want to. UConn won the men's tournament.
Yes.
Okay. And we talked about that. We both did pick them. They just were the class of the tournament. And these two ladies right back here were talking about our bracket. They beat us. They were making fun of us right there. Give a wave. Give a wave. Yeah. Yeah. So she. Our producers, Rachel and Michelle, our producers, they were making fun of us because they picked better on the brackets, and I did remind them it's an indoor sport, not our specialty. But they did well. Michelle picking UConn to win the men's. But I actually want to talk for a second about watching that tournament and then watching the women's tournament. Now, a couple of things here. I looked up the ratings. The women's tournament, the championship game on Sunday that aired here on ABC, we talked about it a little bit last week. 9.9 million viewers.
That's impressive.
It was the highest rated women's final ever. The men's final. Now, there's a lot of reasons I think that you can get into ratings. The men's final, 14.5 million, the least watched ever. So the women's final was the most watched ever. The men's final was the least watched ever. Now, some basics as to why I think that was. It started at 9:30.
Yes, which I do not understand.
You cannot do that.
No.
You know who wanted to watch that game? My son. Couldn't do it. These kids cannot stay up. I couldn't stay up. Okay? UConn was running away with
I
the
didn't even bother watching. I was watching the Phillies.
I didn't either. Me too. And by that point, I was in bed. The UConn was running away with the tournament. It really wasn't that.
It wasn't as competitive as what a championship game should be.
You need characters. You need familiar faces.
The Hurleys are a nice story.
They are, and they were somewhat familiar. Jim Nance's final broadcast, that was a nice story. Yep. But I think when you look at the women and what they were able to do with Caitlin Clark, you're hearing her name out of Iowa.
Even Stephen A. Smith recognizing her as a star, which is an accomplishment.
Yes, and so you had these built-in storylines. Then you have Kim Mulkey, who now is chasing Pat Summitt. She has 4 national titles. Pat had 8. Gino has 11. But Kim Mulkey's a character.
That's putting it nicely, I think.
She is a Southern belle, and she's got the outfits to go with it.
And she wanted to go home to Louisiana.
And I find myself just loving her. So I got to tell you, when you combine all of that, and then the fact of the matter is this. I watched many hours of the men's tournament, and I commented about this on Twitter. I talked to you about this. It was bad basketball.
Yeah, and we've sensed this throughout some of the games of the tournament that I don't know if it's fundamentals. I don't know if it's just, the moment's too big.
I did play basketball once upon a time. And when you study the game, and I watched a lot of it with Jordan and everybody in the 90s, you can see plays develop, and you know what you say. And all I saw in the tournament was guys chucking threes.
Yep.
And missing
and long
threes.
rebounds.
Long rebounds, very few design plays, very few it looked off kilter,
Well, and when you're not hitting the threes, it looks really bad.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are one and dones, right? They
Right.
come in for a year, they leave. So a lot of them are hot dogs and hot shots, and they want the ball. And it's changed a little bit. Now, by the way, let me just say this. The men's tournament provided a lot of exciting moments still.
Yeah,
That's
the first
why,
weekend was
yes,
excellent.
and that's why it's still great, and it's still March Madness, and you want a team like FAU to go far.
Or San Diego State.
Or having FDU upset
Right.
Purdue. Those are all great moments. But I'm saying in a lot of the games, it looks sloppy.
I agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
Penn State irritated me with the way they,
In the second game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the second game, they had every chance in the world to beat Texas, and just lack of execution, lack
Right.
of foresight of this isn't working. Maybe we
Bad
should switch.
rebounding, bad boxing out, bad technique, bad threes, bad design plays. And then you watch the Final Four and the women, and you watch the final. Not only does Caitlin Clark make all of her three-pointers, she sees the play develop.
Yep.
She passes
Sees
it.
the field, if you will.
She sees the field. LSU dominant. They had several star players.
And by the way, that was a transfer team.
Yeah, including Reese, who
Wow.
they got into it after. Yeah, they got into it after. But again, nothing Caitlin Clark didn't do. I thought it was great. They can both taunt a little
But
bit.
you know what? People are talking about it.
Bingo. People are talking about it. And that's what Kim Mulkey said. She goes, I'm not on social media, but if people are talking about it, I didn't see anything that she did that was that horrible. Like, let's celebrate this.
Sure.
9.9 million people watched it. It was a far more entertaining product.
I agree with you, and it was right here on ABC.
And it was it just contained the characters and the storylines you want in sports.
Yes, and it was a more agreeable time for everyone. Sunday in the afternoon.
Bingo, bingo.
Kind of a
3:30.
great window.
It was, and Sunday was a nice day and everything else, and perhaps the ratings could have been even higher had it been pushed to prime. And I don't mean 9:30. I mean like 7, 8 o'clock.
Correct.
But I thought that timing worked out great. People are home. People want to watch sports. 3:30 in the afternoon on a weekend is great.
And I said this countless times during the tournament that outside of the first weekend for the men's side, I lost interest because of the gap of time in between. It's just all the momentum just is gone by that point.
Well, and especially when you have one team that sort of does start to run away
Right.
with it,
Correct.
no doubt. Where, again, the Final Four matchups in the women's and then the championship, you didn't really know that LSU was going to end up dominating that. Iowa had a shot early, especially, but it was fun.
It was fun. It was fun, and it wasn't Gino.
It wasn't Gino.
You know.
But I want us to start getting the male equivalent of outfits that Kim Mulkey wears. I want like flowered arms on our
Interesting.
suits. I want the tiger suit.
Well, you know
Old
who?
Bruce Pearl type
Yeah.
outfits.
Yes, well-
yeah. Oh, I remember
Or
those.
Remember
too.
him?
Jay
Yes.
Wright. I mean, Jay Wright was known for his fancy Italian suits.
Yeah, you're right about that. So
we need characters.
Roy
like
Williams
that.
used to do the all powder blues
Yes.
too
I
back
like
in the
that.
day.
We need to step up our game. That
Well,
is
you
all.
do have the maroon suit.
Oh yeah,
Like a fine
burgundy.
wine, like
The
a fine,
run.
that's polarizing though. But most people like it, and I don't care if they don't.
You just keep doing you.
Yeah, bingo, gentlemen. Another great week, and we certainly wish all of you the best. Have fun this weekend. The holiday weekend for many that celebrate Easter, and another holiday of some sorts for many that celebrate the Masters. We hope that they can get all of the games in. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Check out the YouTube feed because then you can see us.
Yeah, and you can like us. You can subscribe to it so you get the little alerts that say, hey, there's a new episode available. We do our best to get it up every Wednesday afternoon, but sometimes the weather gets in the way. Sometimes I get busy with other things because this is a three-man operation here. I mean, we do it all.
Yeah, you're right. I just got a text from my wife. Remember to stop at the store on the way home. Okay, that means it's time to go. I guess I got my marching orders here. But in all seriousness, gentlemen, let's have a great weekend and let's have fun with the Masters, the MLB, and spring. Enjoy it, everybody.